Do you guys think that we are actually a serious choice for Julian Nagelsmann? He's been linked with the likes of Chelsea, which that has been blown out the water. PSG have come into the mix now as well. We'll start with you, Ash. Do you think that we are a serious candidate, an option for Julian Nagelsmann?
I think the club really want him, and they're trying to create smoke screens all over the place to say, just to make sure they don't get thrown in the mud, because otherwise they'll be knee high in it. But whether I think Nagelsmann, yeah, we are definitely. I think Nagelsmann is considering us. I think so. I don't hear him talking about no other clubs. I know PSG was linked with us at some point. I mean, he was linked with PSG, at some point. But who isn't linked to the PS job? Do you know what I mean? Mourinho's been linked yesterday, so nothing new there. But I think after he ruled himself out of Chelsea, I think he's maybe sold on the project or what potentially could be. He's not a type of man to be standing around for a long time. I think he wants to prove himself. I think his ego is there to show what he can do, what he can produce. He's done it numerous amounts of times at other clubs. I think he wants to show his worth against the actual best in the Premier League, against the elite in the Premier League. So I wouldn't be surprised if we are his choice of destination.
Well, just a follow-up question on that quickly, Ash. What is it about the Tottenham job that makes it more appealing to him than maybe the Chelsea job would?
It depends what's been told to him. I think maybe... like he did say that he has got his reservations and he's doing his due diligence. He is doing a background check or CRB check, as you may, on the club. Levy, Daniel Philip Levy. He has not got a director of.
He just goes by Daniel now.
Just Daniel COYS. Sorry, Daniel COYS.
Yeah.
Daniel. Yeah, he's obviously not got the sporting director of football at the moment, and Nagelsmann has mentioned that being a potential stumbling block. And I just think maybe if that is sorted, he might see somewhat of a future with Spurs. Maybe he sees us as something that could potentially be something he could develop. We might be like a sleeping giant. He might see us as a sleeping giant. We once made it to the Champions League final, so he might see us like he can actually do something else. He was a big fan of obviously Pochettino at the time when he was managing Tottenham, and he's been quoted saying that he likes Mourinho as well, and obviously Mourinho was at Spurs as well. So maybe he feels that he can correct what went wrong by those two managers and prove his worth. So maybe that's it. Or maybe it's the whole stadium facilities, etc. Working with Kane, etc. The usual points, the usual selling points.
Fair enough. I mean, Sean, are you kind of feeling the same way? Do you think that we are a serious option for Nagelsmann?
Nagelsmann will be our next manager, 100% in my mind. I think it's more than just reasonable. I think it's just
someone clip that for future mudding, please. Receipted.
That's what I'm here for. I think that I genuinely do think he will be. I don't see unless Nagelsmann is going to sort of do the dirty a little bit and like give all the indications that he's willing. I personally believe that there are significant conversations that are happening, that have happened, and if you believe the narrative that's presented that he's willing to do it, he just needs to know who he's working with from a director of football role. And I don't believe that just because there's no noise within that framework around the director of football that there's no conversations happening. If you remember, there wasn't a single ITK, there wasn't a single source or journalist from any of the major media outlets that alerted us to Scott Munn. That was just announced out of nowhere on the Tottenham website, as far as I'm aware, unless someone's going to mud me on that one. But I don't remember seeing anything about it.
No, I don't.
And I think that the same. I think the same thing's going to happen with the director of football, and I think that there's a lot of very talented directors of football out there that are potentially available right now. I think that Michael Edwards from Liverpool, who left Liverpool last year, I think he's available, and I think that Julian Nagelsmann would love to work with him. They've got a good relationship. You've got the fella from PSG.
Luis Campos.
Luis Campos. He wants out of PSG at the end of the season. Obviously, you've got Ralf Rangnick, who's currently working with Austria, who's recommended Nagelsmann to the job. His involvement or interest in working with Austria only extends to the European Championships. It's a part-time gig anyway. I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't work with him. What will be interesting to me is what happens and what is actually Scott Munn's role. Is he actually going to be involved in the Tottenham Hotspur footballing club side of the business, or is his role as chief footballing officer more around trying to build relationships with clubs, similar to what his role was with City Football Group? But generally speaking, I'm getting off the topic. To get back from the tangent, I genuinely do think that Nagelsmann, if his hesitations or reservations are around who he needs to know who he's working with, I think those conversations are happening. And I think any one of the number of directors of football that are out there that could be, you will see at Tottenham in the summer, will be good enough for him. So, yeah, I think that it's more than serious. I think I'm happy to be muddied if I'm wrong, but I do think that Nagelsmann will be the Tottenham manager next season.
I asked the question.
Just to jump on that, Sean.
Go on.
Yeah, just to jump on that as well. It's funny about actual Michael Edwards from Liverpool, the actual sporting director. He actually used to be Tottenham's chief analyst under Daniel Comolli. And when Comolli left in 2011. He said he went back for him. He went back for for my guy, and then he ended up obviously losing the job. And then he took more of a serious role, and he became chief analyst there, and then he became technical director, and then eventually sporting director as well. So he has a bit of history with us. And imagine if we kept him on around when Dan Mitchell was around, and he could have potentially been our sporting director as well. So there is history there as well. Just thought I'd add that in.
Yeah, no, I've done a bit of research on him, and I don't think that he had any bad feelings towards Daniel Levy. Obviously, we all thought Paul Mitchell was going to replace him at Liverpool. That's not happening. Liverpool have gone a different direction, apparently. So Paul Mitchell's available. Whether or not he could come back, who knows? Maybe for a different conversation, a different day. But you've also got Monchi from Seville. You got the Hugo Viana from Sporting. There's so much talent out there that in the director of football role. I don't think it matters if you pick one of the top 6 or 7 candidates. I don't think Nagelsmann will have a problem working with any of them as long as he has what he needs, which is a little bit of the final say or some influence over the transfers. And I think that Daniel Levy would be mad not to give that up, given the current environment around his own reputation.
Right now, in this day and age, what makes the Spurs job more of a pull, or not more of a pull, but more of an interesting proposition to Nagelsmann than maybe the Chelsea job?
I think with Chelsea, I think personally, maybe because they've spent so much money and the way they spent the money as well, I think it might be to do with the owner, the American owners. They might have a different idea. Remember, they fell out with his German colleague.
Tuchel, yeah.
That's at Bayern Munich right now. Tuchel might have had a word with Tuchel and then experienced it himself about certain ideas, certain philosophies, and certain non-negotiables. And they might have just spat their dummy out and just said, "Nah, that ain't going in." So he might have just thought, "Right, you know what? Let me just go over to Tottenham because these guys aren't talking my type of language." There's certain things that managers they need, and it's being reported. I don't know how true it is, but he doesn't want to sign unless his actual priorities are met in terms of transfers and what he thinks are right for his footballing philosophy or his footballing ideas, etc., etc. So maybe that's what that conversation that's happened, and maybe he has to get something down in writing before that actually goes ahead and happens. So who knows? We'll see. That's my opinion anyway.
I think that Tottenham is people are presenting this Tottenham job as a poison chalice, and I don't subscribe to that mindset. I think that it maybe was a poison chalice after Jose or before Jose, but then when you've had 2 of the best managers in the world come here and technically failed, I guess you could call it. But the next manager that's coming through is never going to be of the same ilk or the same caliber as Conte or Mourinho. And so anybody, in my opinion, that comes through has got a free hit. If they come in and they fail, it doesn't damage their reputation because Conte and Mourinho failed before them. If they come in and succeed, as a young manager, and that ostensibly seems like one of the criteria that Daniel Levy is looking for as a manager. All of the guys that are on the shortlist are below the age of 50, mostly. Then it's a free hit. If they fail, they've got the excuse of, well, so did Mourinho, so did Conte. If they succeed, they immediately elevate themselves as people, as someone that has achieved far more than Conte or Mourinho does. So for me, this idea that the Tottenham managerial job is a place where good managers go to die, I don't think so. It's the place where up-and-coming managers come to thrive. If they succeed, they are immediately put on a pedestal. If they fail, so did everybody else. For me, it's a no-brainer.
But Sean, on that, with the Spurs job being a poison chalice and stuff, with specifically Nagelsmann, right? He's been sacked by Bayern Munich after a short space of time, or not very long in the job. Everyone expected him to last longer. And if it does fail at Tottenham and he lasts a similar amount of time or a bit less of a time, would you not think maybe clubs will start to second guess him a bit?
No, I don't think so. Like I say, maybe, but if you're thinking about probability or risk assessment, to me, there's risk in everything you do. There's the upside and the downside, and to me, the downside risk is massively superseded and engulfed by the upside risk. If he comes in and Daniel Levy doesn't back him, or Tottenham continue to not support the manager, he can walk. Like I said before, I won't repeat myself. He can walk away and use the excuse of nobody who's gone before me has done any better, and you're comparing me to two of the greatest managers of all time. If he comes in, and it doesn't even matter, no one will. Even if Daniel Levy changes the habit of a lifetime and gives this guy 300 million quid in the summer, just for argument's sake, it won't happen. But just run with me on the thought experiment. No one will remember whether or not Conte was backed and Mourinho, or Conte wasn't backed, Mourinho wasn't backed, and Nagelsmann was. All that they'll remember is that Nagelsmann was the guy who got us a trophy. And if we do it playing good football, then in 10 years' time, also bear this in mind, right? That over the last 22, 23 years of Daniel Levy's era, the two trophies that we've won, I'm not sure if you would include George Graham's trophy because it was right at the start, or maybe not quite at the start of Levy's era. But no one talks about before Graham Ball. No one, just before, right? 2001. It was sort of just before.
It was 99. Whatever. They could take over 2001, okay. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. So no one talks about Graham Ball. No one talks about Ramos Ball. People, when they reflect on the good times at Tottenham, talk about periods when we didn't win anything anyway. Martin Jol, Redknapp, and Pochettino. If Nagelsmann comes in and can create us playing good football and also win a trophy, it doesn't matter. Even if Daniel Levy gives him all the tools that he needs to succeed, and there's a lot of luck along the way, Nagelsmann elevates himself to GOAT status at Tottenham and GOAT status amongst the managerial community. And so does anybody else who gets that gig. So to me, I don't think that Tottenham should be thought of as a poison chalice to a young manager. I think it should be looked at as an opportunity that has very little risk.
Also, to add to that, I think it's a case of, does he suit Spurs? Does the job suit us? Because that Bayern Munich job might not have suited him because of the actual things that were working outside of it. So the politics, the people above him. Not to say that couldn't happen at Spurs as well. I'm not trying to, say it wouldn't happen with him, because obviously it has happened with other managers with Spurs, as we already know. But I mean, we went for the win now type of manager, and it didn't really quite work. And I think with this opposition, I think with this guy, because he's young, I think he ticks both boxes, where you've got kind of like young manager, which can be like a project, but then you've also got the experience of like maybe like a win now, because he's done it at like Hoffenheim, he's done it at RB Leipzig as well. So two teams that aren't like necessarily like your Bayern Munich or your Dortmund or the top tier teams in around the world. So I think he ticks quite a few boxes. And then I think the question really, it should be more in fans' mouths, I think, is the director of football, because the director of football will outlast any manager that comes here. And so we need to know what our identity is and get back to it as quickly as possible. And football fans, for me, are quite black and white in terms of, if we're playing well but we're not winning, that's acceptable. But if we're losing and we're not playing well, that's something where fans can't get behind. So that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I think Nagelsmann should consider, if he's a man, if you think about it, of like with big ideas and a big vision. If you look at Tottenham and comparing him to the clubs that he's managed before, he's obviously taken Hoffenheim and done a brilliant job with them from near relegation to Champions League. He took Leipzig to the semi-finals of the Champions League and had a couple of title challenges as well. And then obviously he might have probably took the Bayern Munich job though, which, let's be honest, when you're 36 or 35, you probably should, that's probably took that job a bit too early. Like, he probably should have waited. He knows himself, I think, that he should have waited a bit before taking that job so he can command a bit more respect from the senior players, whereas now. But Tottenham, in a way, have, like, in terms of the profile of the club, they're like nearer to like maybe like a Bayern Munich or something than to Leipzig. But in terms of the structure, footballing wise, I think, and the structure of the club, I think they are a bit closer to someone like a Leipzig. So I do think there's a lot of scope for him to imprint his own stamp on things. Whereas I think, like, this guy's a very innovative manager. This person, Nagelsmann, if you remember, when he took over at Hoffenheim, he put a massive jumbotron screen in the training ground so he could edit the teams, tell them what they're doing wrong in real time. He's really innovative with the different training methods and stuff. Maybe when he comes in with that kind of stuff at a team like Bayern, it's maybe less well received because they're so successful. Like, why do we need to change anything? Why do we need to do all these different methods? We have to just keep doing what we're doing on the training ground. But like, he comes in with all these innovative methods, which we are desperate for at Tottenham. We need a complete revamp of how we approach things, like from a footballing standpoint. And I feel like we're so behind in these things. And I feel like Nagelsmann should be able to come to Tottenham and be able to imprint his own style and have a lot of control. And maybe at a bigger club, maybe even at Chelsea, he wouldn't have that control. Whereas at Tottenham, because we haven't been as successful as a team like Chelsea, maybe we're so desperate for those different ideas, he'll see that as an opportunity. And so that's why I think he looks at this Tottenham job and he thinks as well, because there's, in a weird way, there's more instability at Chelsea than there is at Tottenham as well right now, because of Bowley. We don't know if he actually knows what he's doing or anything like that. Whereas Levy, like, we know he's like incompetent and stuff, and he's struggled. But at the end of the day, he has been at the club a long time, and he knows he knows the market of football, unlike Bowley, in a different way. So maybe he sees Tottenham as something he can imprint his own ideas in, someone he knows there's a lot of scope to improve this team and stamp his like innovative ideas in the training ground, and he'll get listened to a lot more. And he knows that if he wins something with Tottenham compared to winning something with Chelsea, he'll be seen as a completely different light, even if it's just a League Cup or an FA Cup. If he wins out with Chelsea, people are, well, every manager usually wins something with Chelsea. But at Tottenham, that's that's a massive achievement. So maybe these are, and he probably doesn't want to go the same way as someone like Potter as well. Be there only a few months, get kicked out. He's seen Bowley as well. Tuchel was gone after a few weeks. Potter's gone after a few months. So maybe you see someone like Tottenham where at least you'll probably are guaranteed at least 18 months, you would say, apart from Nuno. Maybe he sees Tottenham as, that's maybe why he sees them as a better opportunity as Chelsea.
100%. Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, and the difference is, I think, as well, that, I think that Chelsea, I 100% concur that at Chelsea you have higher expectations that are potentially seen as more unreasonable. I'm not saying that the expectations at Tottenham are not necessarily reasonable within certain fans, that there is an unreasonable level of expectation around Tottenham, but I think that the levels are different, and like you say, the unknowns around Bowley, his trigger happy reactionary shooting from the hip style of ownership is a little bit off-putting as well. I think that, listen, Nagelsmann comes with a little bit of an attitude and probably didn't like the fact that he was part of an interview process. He probably thought he should walk into the job and be treated as slightly precious. And I don't know if that's necessarily an endearing quality or not, but I would imagine that Daniel Levy is having those conversations with Tottenham, with Nagelsmann, and making him feel a little bit more special than maybe Todd Bowley has made or did make him feel. And that's the reason why Nagelsmann said, no, listen, if I'm just part of a curiosity conversation, then sorry, not for me. I want you to.
Has he done enough in his career though to earn that right? Has he done it? Because he's not a Conte, he's not a Jose Mourinho with that CV behind him. So has he done enough to earn that right?
Correct.
No, he hasn't.
Probably not. No, he hasn't. He hasn't. But these are the personalities that make you winners, right? Remember Jose Mourinho walking into Chelsea, what was it, 20 years ago, and saying, "I am the special one."
But he had just won the Champions League with Porto.
He had won things. Yeah, of course. I know. I understand that. But Nagelsmann probably reflects on his own tenure and his own. He's only 35 years old, and he has won things at Bayern. He has done good things with Leipzig. I'm not saying that it's the same or comparable, but you could imagine him having a bit of an ego and a bit of a narcissistic complex as well. I'm not saying, like I say, I'm not saying it's a good thing. It might even eventually be considered a bad thing, but that probably is one of the reasons why he's walked away from Chelsea, is because he doesn't want to be embarrassed to be someone who's putting his hand up, putting his name in the hat, having conversations, and then ultimately be turned down. I don't think he's been turned down for jobs in his life, and so he probably might come to Tottenham and think, I'm not going to be rejected by Tottenham, but I don't want. It's almost like one of those "you ain't firing me, I quit" scenarios with the interview process at Chelsea. So, well, I don't know. We'll see. I personally believe that Nagelsmann will be the Tottenham manager in the next 3 months. So.
Man. Also, another thing that's just making me think with the Chelsea job. I know it's a bit of a side note, but what going for Poch? Is Poch going to be the Chelsea manager, or it's taking a bit long?
It's gone quiet, hasn't it? It's gone quiet.
It's gone a bit quiet. So I'm not saying that anything to do with Poch with us, but I'm just saying that in terms of how they're handling their process is not as straightforward as I thought it would be. Maybe there's more to it than that's the reason why Nagelsmann probably potentially could have walked away. So I don't know.
I think Poch is waiting to speak to Ricky Villa. That's what it is.
Oh yeah, snap!
I think Boli's worried about the fan backlash. I reckon, because I reckon he's seeing a lot of the reactions, and he's probably thinking, is this the right idea? Is this going to be an appointment where the first sign of trouble, the fans are going to turn on him? I think we've seen already Boli bow to the fan pressure, because I don't think he wanted to sack Potter, in my opinion. I think he wanted to give him till the end of the season, but the fan pressure got so heavy that he just, at the end of the day, there was one loss too many, and he had to let him go. So I think he's someone who definitely listens to the outside pressure, and I think that's probably maybe why he's having second thoughts about bringing Pochettino back.